Welcome to the Corporate Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McWhorter. I'm a corporate dropout, recovering people pleaser and perfectionist turned burnout recovery coach. If you're sick of the corporate roller coaster ride and ready to step into a life that you love, this is the podcast for you. Hey there, and welcome back to the Corporate Detox Podcast. So it's a new year, and this is the first episode that I am recording and publishing for the Corporate Detox Podcast in 2023. And honestly, I couldn't have thought of anyone else that I would want to share this episode with other than Noelle Morgan. Noelle is someone that I connected with through a coaching container that we're both in. And she actually joined me on episode 4, where she talked to us about her journey from going from a corporate HR rock star to a trauma-informed life and leadership coach. I am so excited to be able to bring this episode to you. Both of us really went into this episode with absolutely no agenda, and we talk about our experiences as human resources professionals within the corporate space. We talked about everything from the good, the bad, the ugly, and what we were grateful for those experiences. So I'm so excited for you to listen. And just to give you a little bit of background about Noelle. So Noelle spent 20 years in corporate HR. She worked in global pharmaceuticals, and she lived in both the US and the UK during that time. She decided to leave the corporate world in 2017 when she realized that the mask that she had been hiding behind no longer fit who she was becoming. And since leaving the corporate space, Noelle has blossomed into this beautiful, certified trauma-informed life and leadership coach. She works one-on-one with female leaders across the globe to help them navigate not only their personal, but also their corporate worlds so they can speak up and show up with confidence. Let's get to it. And Noelle, thank you so much for joining me again. I thoroughly enjoyed our first conversation, and I cannot wait for what we have lined up today and moving forward for some more podcasts.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back again. I loved our chat last time, so I'm just excited to kind of keep the energy flowing.
Yes, absolutely. So I know today we wanted to just really have a good conversation about our experience in human resources and the good, the bad, the ugly.
Warts and all.
We definitely don't have anything planned today other than this is what we're going to talk about. So I can't wait to see where this takes us. So let's start out. How did you get started in human resources? Like, what pulled you to that area of business?
It's funny because I was thinking about that before we came on, before you press record. And as cliche as it sounds, and I think the fact that I've now moved my career into a leadership coach, it probably isn't that cliche, but I moved into HR because I actually wanted to help people. My degree was in psychology, so that was an interesting choice to take. And probably, back then I chose psychology because, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I thought it would lead me somewhere into the caring profession. And I think HR fitted quite nicely into that for me. I had a choice to go either become a psychologist, and that was frankly far too much hard work. So I chose to go down the HR route.
That's
what
so
about
funny.
you?
Oh, so when I had no intention of ever being in human resources, ever. And it ended up being the position that I loved the most. And I was very lucky to have a district manager at the time, and he was a great mentor for me. And still is. We still stay in touch. But he was the one that was like, hey, we have, at the time, the company that I worked for was going through some restructuring. And unlike some corporate restructures, this one was actually adding headcount and adding people at district level. It was a great time to be in the organization and be part of that change. So they were basically elevating the human resources role. So I at the time was running a high volume grocery store, and he wanted me to step into that position. And when he told me that, I was like, are you kidding? Because I have no HR experience, and I don't know the first thing about that position. And he said, you're really good with people. You're really good with people. You care about them. And that's what we need. And much like you, I'm a helper, right? I'm a helper. And it's funny now that we're on this journey in the coaching realm and where it's taken us, helpers and healers, that's where we're at. It's just funny how life takes us that path.
Yeah.
Because I truly had no clue about the first thing about HR.
Yes, yes. And I think if I'd have done one of our beautiful visioning exercises that we've learned as part of our coaching journey, I can't imagine, like you, that being an HR leader in my case, in global pharmaceuticals, living and working abroad, would have been in that vision.
I totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of like, HR, what, why?
Yes.
But it happened, and it happened for both of us. And I think, we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. It gave us many, many beautiful gifts.
Oh, beautiful gifts, the ability to see how much I can help people. Yeah. Right. And I'm sure it's the same thing for you. That was definitely like being able to help people grow, help people keep their jobs. I mean, I worked in a union setting. So, I was going through the grievance process, and it was not fun all the time. But being able to give people a second chance, sometimes a third chance, and know that it's impacting their life was amazing. And I'll just bring up, I guess, my own scenario. Like, there was a couple interviews that I had to sit in on that were men in, we had kind of grown up in the company together. And when it came time for that interview, just because I was in there in an HR role, like the attitude totally changed. And at one point, I remember I wasn't leading the interview, but I was the note taker. And I remember the person we were interviewing was talking about me, like just bad mouthing me. And I had to like document all this stuff and keep a straight face. And it was probably one of the best experiences for me for growth, because I had to learn like not to have that reaction, because I have facial reactions for everything. And that taught me, like, you can't react. Like, I just sat there like he was talking about someone else and took notes. So like, what did you ever have any like situations where you were like, whoa?
Unbelievable. I don't know what I'd have done in that situation. Sorry, Amanda, who are you talking about here? Oh yes, that's me. I think for me, the funny thing was that and this is one of my definitions of success, was like, I need to be in a job where I wear a suit, because that's my definition of a success. And that shows that I'm doing well, which, as we know, is complete nonsense. But once I put that suit on, it actually didn't matter who I was interviewing. I could be interviewing the CEO, the chairman of the board, or, another HR assistant. So from all kind of like, all up and down the ladder. And I think for me, it was, once I was in that suit, I felt that nobody could touch me. It kind of like, it gave me a sense of power. But then there were always those situations where, you go in there and you have your list of questions, and you've got to ask everybody the same question, and you've got 45 minutes. And even though you know that within the first maybe question that this person perhaps isn't right for the organization. You have to ask all of them. And you get all sorts, you get those who it's very hard to get an answer out of them, and those who will talk for England. And I remember with this individual, and I think he had been on the first question for about 20 minutes. And I said to him, okay, in the interest of time, we actually do need to move on to question 2. And he said, no, hang on, I haven't finished on question 1. And that was it. And I thought, if you can't be respectful of our process, then this isn't going to work. But yeah, he put his hand up like a stop sign and said, hang on, no, I haven't finished on question 1. And I think you have to deal with so many different types of individuals, don't you? Like you said,
yeah.
with the person who was bad-mouthing you and you in the room, that you just develop this kind of like inner strength that I think it just kind of like it washes over you.
Yeah, it does. It does. So what were some of the best moments for you?
The best moments for me. So I think when I started off in my first pharmaceutical career, I'd been with them in the UK for maybe about 2 years, and then being asked to go over as an expat to the US to help the SVP of HR set up the HR function in the US. And that was huge, because I went by myself to the US, where I don't think I'd ever been before. Maybe I'd been for a kind of like a long weekend to New York. I'd been asked by the SVP of HR to go to the US and set up the HR function there. So that was absolutely amazing and terrifying as hell. But a sense of pride for me, that I felt that I think I've kind of maybe made it a bit here. Something changed in me. And I think that for me was probably the highlight. To work in a different environment of the same global company, but to work in a different culture.
Yeah, it's not like they didn't ask you to move like 2 hours away. They asked you to legit move to a different country.
Yeah.
To help get them what I would say is probably on the right track when it came to human resources.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Managing your talent internally.
Yeah.
Giving someone the development opportunity. And to actually manage an expat assignment is not easy, and it's very, very costly. But yeah, how to do HR properly. Recognize somebody who is willing and has the skills to take what she's done in the UK, and do it in the US.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think you're right, because so many times we hear about how organizations don't focus enough on the talent that they have right under their noses, because they believe, she or he is not ready exactly now. I want someone to hit the ground running, so they go outside.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, I think in my time in HR, in that period of 4 years, 4 or 5 year time period, I definitely saw that pendulum swing in the company that I work for. So when I came in, right, it was all about developing internal talent and promoting them. And they had a clear career path, right? Like we did a lot of career pathing, and this is how you get to the next level, to, budget cuts, not being able to retain the talent that we had, and more of a focus on going outside the organization to fill open spots and passing over people that were so loyal to that company for so long.
Yeah. And then wondering why they leave.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. So, and really the struggle with, as one person, not being able to influence that on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Right. So, I could advocate for the folks that I knew that were in my district. But when someone, 4 states away is making a decision that, like, no, this is the recruiting, this is how we're going to do our recruiting efforts, and it's going to be really focusing on external, that was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, because we're HR. We're not the CEO, we're not the chairman, we're not the president, we're HR. We can advise, we can influence, we can advocate for, as a business partner, for both the business and the employee. But at the end of the day, based on all that information, the decision rests with the business.
Oh,
but I think, people would come to you or to me and say, how could you let that happen? As if we had the final say.
yeah. We would talk about how when there would be upper leadership changes, right, upper management changes, and different people would step into roles, you could clearly see how invested they were on the HR side of the business by how much they valued the input and included the senior management, senior HR management folks in conversations and meetings and decisions versus not.
Yeah. Do we want you to be a true strategic HR business partner, or do we want you to input holiday and input sickness and make the notes at the disciplinary?
Keep us out of trouble, right? Keep us out of court.
Yeah.
Like that's
it.
That's how you start feeling after a while.
That's it. Organize the Christmas party.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there is a huge difference in organizations that recognize HR for the strategic value that it has versus wanting you just to police it.
Oh,
and keep everything under control.
Yep. Put out fires. That's about it.
Yes.
Right? Like put out the fires, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But not actually be there for the strategic planning, the long-term vision, right? Like helping people.
Planning.
Yeah. And giving honest feedback.
Yes. Yeah. And I think for me, some of the challenges was empowering managers to actually have the difficult conversations with their employees themselves, or give the feedback, or do the appraisals, the performance reviews, rather than that's not my job, and passing it back to HR. And I don't know what you would have done in those situations, but I was very much, no, you do it. What type of conversation you need to have with him or her. We've given you the skills, we've given you the training. Now, you need to go off and have that discussion.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was managers, especially in retail, I don't feel like get enough HR training. And it's hard for them to have honest performance discussions. For not everyone, right? Some people are very, very good at that. But there are a lot that are not. And that's really, really, really difficult, because when it comes down to being able to manage performance and putting people in right fit roles, if your immediate supervisor is not having that conversation with you or being honest, that is so, so, so difficult. And it does more damage, really.
Yes. Because I think it's kind of, it's great to promote people, but don't set them up to fail. you need to promote them into the next level job, whether that's their first leadership position, with all the coaching and the mentoring and the training. Because it's like putting someone into a car, a kid, a 16-year-old into a car and say, right, drive me to the shops. I've never driven a car. I've seen you drive a car, but I've never driven one myself. To me, it's kind of, it's almost as kind of like scary. And that's what some do. They expect them to hit the ground running, but not give them the tools and the resources and the support to make a success of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the hardest things for me too was recruiting, in the aspect that there was very much not in alignment on what expectations were. So here's the company's expectations of your work week and the hours that you work. And then people would get into role and the expectation was totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah.
And really the times where I would be honest with people and say, listen, we say this, but that's really a minimum. We say 55 hours is your normal work week, but that's a minimum. It's going to be more than that. That's hard because people all over the place weren't having those conversations.
Yes. And they'd come up, I can imagine, because they're, in the UK, and I know they had them in the US, they'd kind of like flash their job description in front of you, say, look, it says it on here.
Yes.
And it'd be like, yeah, but that's the minimum that you're required to do. This caveat at the bottom, and any other business. But people would really kind of, wouldn't they? They'd really stick themselves to this job description as if it was kind of like the Bible. But look, it says it here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, the best part of being in HR was the promoting people. Being able to give promotions to folks, and just seeing it, how like that can change their life, change the life for their family, was one of the most fulfilling things. Especially, I mean, not that like giving promotions for someone that you didn't know, but like for me, having to be able to promote folks that, I'd worked with for a long time, and their kids and their parents and what their situation is. You have that personal connection, and just knowing like the amount of like life-changing things that comes with that promotion.
Yes. Because I mean, you've used the words, it can be life-changing.
Yes.
For some, whether it's kind of like up an extra tier of benefits, or they get extra holiday, or obviously it's more, it's more salary or bonus. It can literally be life-changing. And to see that kind of like look, isn't it, of just absolute, glee and joy.
Yes.
On their face is just, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think for me was when it was, and it's very similar to yours, it's when we showed that we invested in them. And for me, it was like getting talent a coach. So getting key talent, an executive coach, to work with them for a 6 month or a 12-month period. And to me, that would show to them how much value we put in them, and how much we wanted them to succeed, and how much we believed in them. Because as you know, it's not cheap to bring coaches into the business from outside. So to actually show that I believe in you so much, and I really want to set you up for success and to help you get there, because I believe that you will get there, but to support you in that process, I'm gonna give you a coach for 6 months or 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one thing the company that I work for did not offer, right? Like there was mentorship within the company, but nothing really with that outside perspective that's like truly, truly invested in like your success.
Yeah.
And when I left and I start digging into this world of coaching, I was like, what in the world is this? I had no clue it even existed. There were so many times I would say that I was so grateful for the training opportunities that we got. But at the end of the day, they had, they were all connected to some sort of like process change that was going on within the company. And it wasn't necessarily just on my individual growth.
Yeah. Mm.
So, oh yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what made you exit the HR world.
Woohoo!
What revelations, what realizations did you have that were like, holy crapola, I do not want to be here?
It was a bit of a holy crapola. I think I recognized that I think there was two things. I was getting frustrated with just focusing on doing a lot of downsizing of the companies, doing a lot of restructuring of companies. So unlike your restructure, we were actually getting rid of people. And it was almost getting the reputation that I'd spent so many years trying to get rid of, this kind of like cloak of, oh God, here comes HR. Because I'd say 80% of my focus was on restructuring, taking it literally from start to finish. And that got, I mean, imagine on the people on the other side, but it actually became quite morally, it was draining for me, and my energy began to get depleted by it. So it was kind of, firstly, it was a bit of a kind of like, I'm not putting my skills in the right place. And already by then I realized that coaching was what was sets my soul on fire. So there was that bit around skill set. It felt very mismatched. But then the biggest thing, and I've mentioned this before, was, and who looks after HR? And that, Amanda, and even though and every time I say it, and I say it again just now, it sends shivers through me, because who looks after HR? And we spend so much time doing all the beautiful things and giving these gifts to people, whether it's through the interviews or the succession planning or the talent management and all the other stuff that we do and the coaching. But who gives that back to us? And I think I realized that was a huge gap for me, because I had something towards the end of my career that I actually needed some support with. And I felt quite isolated and alone in terms of who would be there to help me. And I remember talking to a lady on the phone. It was actually an executive coach for somebody else. And we were bringing her into the business. And she said to me, can I just ask you, Noelle, this is tough. How are you in all of this? And you know, when you kind of like, you feel this lump in your throat, you think, I'm not going to cry. I can't cry. I'm not going to cry. But I could feel my voice shaking. And, you know, typical me. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. You know, brush it off. When deep down, I wasn't fine. And I realized that all of my energy was being pushed outwards to everybody else, but there was nothing left for myself. And I think then I realized that this emptiness was, you know, some of it was skills, but I think it was internal emptiness. And that's when I realized, you know, coming home every night, and my husband was like, you've got to get out. You've just got to get out. I'm like, okay, yeah. You know, and then I got out because I was literally at breaking point.
Yeah.
And you know, listening to my own body and thinking, you know, coming home in tears, something's not right here. And that's when I made the decision. And you know, it tingles me all the way down to my toes saying that right now, with a sense of pride that I actually managed to speak up for myself and get out. But it was a big wake up call that it's so easy, a bit like you said, with the helpers, we're all about everybody else, making sure that everybody else is all right. Yes, I can do that for you, but then meanwhile, I kind of like felt like a battery with the oil inside just going lower and lower and lower, or like driving around my car on hardly any petrol. It's like, and yeah, that for me, when that lady said to me, and then who looks after you, and how are you, Noelle? And I was like, oh, with my, my bottom lip. So that was my sign.
Man, that's so true. All like, and you and I've talked about this numerous times, like the lack of people watching out for the HR folks.
Yeah.
Is crazy to me. And to look at like now from this position to meet people who have been in HR roles and had huge health events in those roles, and a lot of it's all stress related, right? So like coming back to how do you support those people, and now you can do that, right? You can do that and help people even in other roles as well. And and being able to say now we take all these skills, and how fulfilling it is to be able to help people in this capacity outside of all of the corporate red tape and worrying about who's thinking about, are you gonna get in trouble for saying this to someone or recommending this, like being able to do it on your terms where it's just authentically coming from you and coaching in your heart.
Yeah. But the message needs to be inside the organizations.
Yep.
Because there will be lots of people like me who keep that stiff upper lip, pretend that everything's okay, the mask stays on, the suit stays on, I'm a powerful HR leader, whereas inside, you're crumbling. But there needs to be, like you said, there needs to be more awareness that HR are also need to be looked after from a mental health and well-being perspective.
Yeah. That's when I think about like, my mission in corporate detox and, what I'm doing to try to get into organizations and businesses and help like that. Those are the folks that, not that I won't help people outside of that, but like those folks need so much help. And sometimes they don't even know it.
Yeah.
Right. Until you get a question like that. How are you in all of this? And then it's like, holy crap, like I'm a mess, but I'm here smiling and doing what I'm supposed to.
Yes. And the thing is, that was probably the first time anyone, and I was in HR for 20 years, okay? That was the first time anyone had asked me, how are you in all of this? Because we do the good stuff, the lovely stuff, the building up stuff in HR, but we also do the stuff that, can be a bit soul destroying in terms of restructures for some people. And that was the first time somebody asked me that question. And how are you in all of that? How are you in all of this? And I think that is where the work that you do with your corporate detox and the work that I do, coaching female leaders, it's about, getting organizations to be more aware of the helpers, I think. Be more aware of the people who do all the helping and taking care of everybody else, that they actually need looking after too.
Yep. Yeah. I think for me, we went through a reorganization where the company did layoffs, but there were things that they asked of us, but didn't tell us why. Right. And some of the information that we had to give on a very quick turnaround led to folks losing their jobs. And that always, I struggled with that from day one, because I fully understand that there are things that have to be kept confidential, but if you can't tell your full HR team what's going on,
Yes.
That's a problem.
Yes.
In my opinion. Like that is a problem because to me, they're people, right? They're people with families, they're people with kids, they're people who have devoted, years and years and years to this organization and gave up so much. And there were so many times where people were just looked at like numbers.
Yeah.
So like that happened, and that was really the beginning of me saying, oh, I need to find something else.
Yeah.
But it took a few years. And really towards the end, when it came to performance ratings, yearly performance ratings, it became such a numbers game that when you wanted to give somebody something that they earned, but you couldn't because
It's the pot.
they're
It's
not a
the pot, isn't
unicorn.
it?
Yeah, they're not a unicorn. They're this, or you don't have enough people that are needs improvement that need to be on performance plans. Like I struggled with that because
Yeah.
I gave you my honest rating and
Yes.
their
Yes.
leaders gave you honest ratings.
Yes.
And that is really where a lot of like values misalignment came up for me.
Yeah. 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 It's we've got because we worked on like a 5-point rating scale,
Yes.
with 1 meaning that you walked on water and you were the best thing ever since sliced bread, and then the 5 was the opposite end of the scale. And like you, in the pot, you'd got all the feedback from the leader. The individual had absolutely worked their socks off, but we couldn't give them a 1, walks on water, because we've actually only got 5 ones to give.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly right. It's kind of like the frustration of kind of the misalignment of the values.
Yeah.
Here. It's a numbers game.
It is, and it's awful. Like it's awful.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in a meeting and being told we don't give out, because our rating scale was a 5-point scale, but it was opposite from yours. So 1 was like your needs improvement, or worse, and then your 5 was the unicorn, the walks on water.
Yes.
And it was like, we don't give out 5s. Well, then why do you have it?
Yes.
Why is it there?
Let's do a 4-point rating scale.
These people are giving up so much every day. And
Yeah.
you're telling me that nobody gets that? Come on.
Yes. Yes. And damn well that there would have been 5s in the company.
Oh, absolutely.
But just not in your little world of retail department there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I struggled with that big time because I was the one that had to deliver the message. I was the one that had to say, I'm sorry, this is your rating. Like people were calling me. Yes. And I couldn't say, I'm sorry, we don't give those out.
Yes. We didn't have enough in the pot.
80% of our people need to be a 3.
Yeah.
I couldn't say that.
Yeah. And the thing is, the message that you gave back to the employee, even though inside you wanted to say, no, it's not bloody fair. I agree with you. But obviously you had to give that message, the corporate message back, that you've done absolutely exceptional. I know that you've worked all the hours, and I know that you've worked some weekends, and I know that you've worked into your evenings. However, we're going to give you a 2 in my case, not a 1. But I just want you to remember how brilliant that you really are. And it's kind of like they look at you and like,
Yes, exactly. It became such a joke to people. Yeah. And now to sit back and look at like what's going on in the world with quiet quitting, people realizing how burnt out they are. And we wonder why, right? Like people would be working 70 hours a week, time away from their family, and they were just a normal rating.
Yeah.
Just a normal rating. You're just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Thanks for meeting expectations. When really they're giving so much.
Yes.
They're giving so much. So I struggled with those. I struggled with the whole rating thing. I struggled with what it meant financially for folks, what it meant when it came to, you have to have so many people on performance plans. It was a numbers game, and it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. I think for me, it was the politics.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's what you know, and you know me, I don't kind of like hold myself back from saying stuff. And I think for me, the politics was the hardest. And I noticed the difference from working in the UK to working in the US. And I felt that there was, you know, whether it was because there was no, you know, because you're in employment at will in the US, as you know. But I think it was kind of like almost like people seemed to stay quieter more,
Yeah.
rather than speak up, you know, and be a disruptor or rock the boat. Because I think there was an underlying fear that got to be careful here.
Yeah.
Be careful here, you know, because if I say something, what could it mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. I was never into the politics of it. I would tell people all the time, if they would say, I don't understand why you don't transfer and work in the division office or, you know, do other things with your career. And I'm like, I could not, there's no way. I don't play into office politics. I can't stand it. And I gave too much feedback, I think. I think that wouldn't last very long when I would
Yes.
be the disruptor and say, this isn't right. Um,
Yes.
especially if there would be no change that came from that.
Yes. I remember actually once, now that you remind me, sitting around a table with two other HR colleagues and our lovely head of legal, and we were talking about an employment situation. And I had the audacity to not agree with my HR colleague. The audacity to not agree with my HR colleague. And I actually was in alignment with what with what the head of legal was saying, and I felt it was a risk. And as we were walking out the office down the corridor, this HR person said to me, "Well, you should have told me if you weren't going to agree with me." And I was like, And I think for me, that just cemented the fact that, you know, we all had to, you've heard the good old phrase, you know, sing from the same hymn sheet, all agree with each other, and not allowed to be, you know, to be a disruptor and not to kind of like say anything that was out of consensus with everybody.
Mm.
And that's quite a difficult way to actually work, isn't it? Because it's kind of
Yeah.
like we all have different perspectives. And if you're being forced to agree with what everyone else is saying, whether it's HR or not, then how are you actually showing up authentically?
Yeah. Yeah. That would come back to, I wouldn't say come back to bite me, but definitely would make the process a little bit longer or more conversation when we would be negotiating union contracts. I would sit on the committee and be on the company side, of course, but I looked at the people that we were, negotiating the contract for were people that like are my neighbors, right? So they're my neighbors. I've grown up with them. I know their families. I know their kids. I just know so much about them. And at that point, you're talking about people and not numbers or dollars, right? So for me, I was always chiming in, well, that's not going to work, or that's not fair. That's not going to work for this sect of people. Like it's not going to work. And it was a good thing and it was a bad thing, I think. A bad thing because at times it was like, oh, come on, like, let's move this along from the company standpoint. But like, I would get so emotionally invested in some of those decisions that, it was really hard. And for me, I think the last contract that I helped negotiate, I had an emotional breakdown. which is not unlike me. I can be a very emotional person, and I was not afraid to show that. But I had a breakdown in our company room, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is just absolutely crazy. And this is why I'm so upset, because like, these are my friends and family, essentially. I've known them my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like that, being able to stand up for the people, it was something I always prided myself in.
Mm.
But it wasn't always widely accepted.
Yes. Yes, and it's kind of, standing up for the employees, but it's actually also and speaking your truth.
Oh yeah.
Because even if you didn't know those people as much as you did, you would still speak up for what you believed in.
Yep.
In terms of, fairness or equality, diversity, because that's your truth. And that's you kind of like showing up authentically.
Yes.
And I think sometimes in HR, there's an expectation that you don't do that if it can maybe rock the boat a bit. That's my experience. I'm not assuming it's the same for everywhere.
Oh,
But
no, I agree, because you're at that point that you're representing the company, right? So
yes.
in a way that good and bad,
Yeah.
because there is this like expectation of, well, this is what you say and this is what you act and this is what we do. But
Yeah.
then there's your heart and your authenticity and your truth that sometimes doesn't align, or maybe that's not the way it's been handled for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. But if you can't, and that's when I began to feel kind of like misaligned, like you said. If you can't speak up and say what's on your mind in a respectful way, of course, if you can't speak up and say what's on your mind at work, how does that translate to who you are and how you're showing up outside?
Yeah.
Because then I began to realize that I didn't want to be two different people. Because the person outside speaks up and says what's on her mind and is aligned with her values, and the person inside the corporate environment is also that person. And I think when those two kind of like tires start to rub together against the road and they're kind of like, they're a bit squeaky, then it's okay, it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit here.
Yeah.
If I'm not allowed, to be authentically me.
Yeah. And I think of how many people, me included, towards the end, I did censor myself.
Yeah.
And that, like, I then did that in my personal life.
Yes.
Right. I did. And it took me I still struggle with, like, just say it, right? Like, just say it and be you, because I struggled with that when I left.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hurt feelings. I didn't want to, it was like this whole like people pleasing part that I never really thought I was until I stepped away. And I'm like,
Yeah.
holy crap, like that, it's a direct result of that. And I still see that. I see that in my clients. I see that, in people that, I network with, that are in that corporate space. And you lose that authenticity, and you start censoring yourself all over the place.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yep.
So as you said, kind of like you're a people pleaser in work, and then it shows in your relationships at home, with your family, with your kids, with your other half, because you're one person.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay, Noelle. So we are gonna do almost like a little series, right? of podcast
Yes.
interviews, and I'm really excited about that. So this will not be the last time that you are on the Corporate Detox podcast. But before we leave today, I do want to ask you, what are you grateful for from your corporate HR experience?
What a lovely question. And I was actually just doing some journaling before I got on this call in terms of what am I grateful for in 2022. So what am I grateful for out of my HR career? I wouldn't have changed a thing. 20 years I was there. I got the opportunities to work for some fantastic companies, met some amazing people, lived and worked in another country, developed some amazing skills, found my love for coaching throughout that, from it. And then the last bit, which makes me a bit emotional actually, is found the truth of who I am.
Don't even think I can top that right now, because now you got me in my feels today. Oh,
yeah. What about you?
Much like you, being able to meet and develop relationships with people that I'm still, really good friends with, working with the same company for 18 years. I have a lot of great connections, but it's people that I consider family. But out of my HR role, I would definitely say that I'm most grateful for all of the experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the hilarious, because they are definitely feeding into how I help my clients, how I, help companies. It is the medicine that my clients will need, right? So all of these experiences are for a reason, and I truly believe that. But like you said, like that role made me grow and made me learn a whole lot that I'm super grateful for, because I think that there are a lot of people that don't get to see that side of the business.
Yeah.
To know if the values align.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a journey. I know we can overuse that word sometimes, but it's the journey that you have to go through to realize what's important to you.
Oh, yes.
And for some, it's kind of like it's longer than 20 years, which is absolutely fine. But for me and you, it came to a point where we were like, yeah, I'm taking all that beauty and now I'm going to sit on the other side of the fence.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. I think we should write a book.
We should.
Each chapter, some of our HR experiences. One of them, that's chapter, one of the chapters is the interview. Slagging off HR while she's in the room. And mine is the conversation opposite the gentleman who'd been a little bit naughty. I think we should write a book, love.
We should. Maybe that'll be on our vision for this year to get that started. So,
it would be a lot of fun to relive some of that.
I love our time together. I really do. So grateful for you. And for anyone listening, why don't you go ahead and remind them on how they can find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. So my name, Noelle Morgan. And my website is www.coachnoelle.com. But gosh, awesome. I don't have a longer name.
Hey, go check her out. She's definitely a life changer and someone that you want to have in your circle. So thank you. Thank you,
my love. I look forward to our next.
If you're looking for more information on how to work with me, you can check out my website at amandamcquarter.net and look at different offerings that I have and some freebies that might be of value to you. If you're on social media, feel free to follow me at Amanda K. McQuarter on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.